All right, I'm going to call this meeting to order. Hi, everybody. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Beckon,
Oh, here.
Dean,
Here.
Gardner,
Here.
Leo,
Here.
Lewis,
Here.
Steve,
Here.
Preston.
Here.
All right, very good. No agenda changes, so we have guest speakers. Mr. Manager, you want to take it first, or you just want me to have them come on up?
Come on up, come on.
All right, Eric
down.
and Bill, you want to join us at the podium, or you just leave? All right, very good.
Bill will hang back for support here. Thank you
Eric.
for having us here at the workshop today. We're excited to be back, and I will, it's a brief presentation to update you on discussions and plans in the works for 2023 for 2 additional markers here in Saugatuck that we are requesting approval from the city for. And I have a handout that I think you all have now. The format for these markers is very much the same as the markers that went up this past spring. And based on the feedback we've had, both from the council and from people out on the street and in the community, they've been really successful, lots of visibility and lots of engagement. So we're happy with the design of those, and we're coming back with 2 more here in Saugatuck. So if you want to move on to the next slide here, the format again will be the same. There's sponsors for each of the 4 panels at this point, 2 per location. So we're really excited about that we have underwriting, the project's moving forward. Next slide. I'll go through both of these quickly. Jones Park is the site just outside our window here. And we're excited as we come into the workshop today that we've been able to meet with Scott Herbert and the DPW crew, as well as with Scott Dean, who was able to come out on behalf of the Parks Committee and look at both the sites. So this Jones Park site, we had some refinements of it as we came out on site this past week. But you can see in your packet and on the screen where the star is located. We're looking at that as the best location for that steel structure, and the 2 marker panels that'll tell the story of the interurban and of downtown Saugatuck, of Butler Street, and in the history of Saugatuck that you can see that lives here at this site. Next slide. Oval Beach is the second Saugatuck site that we're proposing, and we're really excited about this location. Again, it's just such a beautiful and historic spot, and I think a great opportunity to connect people to the environment and the environmental change at the lakeshore, as well as the cultural landscape and the history of Oval Beach from the 1930s through to today. And the location that you can see in the photograph and on the site plan there is just out in front of the restrooms and bathhouse, where lots of people are lined up or picnicking. And there's a great opportunity to learn some history as we look at those 2 sites. So next steps, I'd love to have any questions or comments that the council has. We had a letter of agreement that we used last year that City Manager Ryan Heisa and I worked through. And so we think the language of that will remain much the same, now 2 markers instead of 4. And we'd like to come to council for approval of sites and to finalize our plans for 2023. Any questions or comments that you all have?
You want to add?
I'll just add, I think it's amazing what the team has done. I mean, I can attest to the fact that the existing markers generate a lot of interest. I don't think there's a day when I go down to Wicks Park, to hop on the boat or just go to music in the park, that I don't see people taking the time to actually read about our city's history. So the concept has proven to be really wonderful. And we think we found 2 good locations. We are going to be painting the old ticket booth or whatever it is, along with City Hall. So we think that's really going to pop once that fresh paint is done. So we didn't want to crowd it too much. And we found a spot that Scott Herbert said would work with his maintenance needs. Doesn't involve cutting any pavement. And indeed, the old decrepit Allegan County marker is going to be removed because that's in very bad shape. And this will actually, I think, the new one will actually cover some of the material that was on that marker. The Oval Beach one, Scott wanted to be careful about a new swing set that's going in. And he's very comfortable with the location for the marker vis-a-vis where this new swing will go in, so it won't be a hazard. And it's also, it won't prevent him from moving the swing set away from some of the dune grass that he likes to protect and people are very sensitive towards. So yeah, the Oval Beach one's really exciting because, you know, it's sort of right in the path of where people line up. So people will be waiting to use the concession and actually maybe learn a little bit about our town while they're waiting for a slushie or something. So I think they're good, but I'm sure Eric would be happy to answer any other questions from the council.
Anything to add?
Nothing else to add, Madam Mayor.
Council, questions, comments?
I'd say
That's great.
nice work, Eric and Bill. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Very nice.
Very good. Thank you so much. All right, so will we have us on the agenda Monday or what's the plan?
Dr. Eric, are you going to be ready to roll on Monday for official confirmation for the project?
Say yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. There you go.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. All right, excellent. Next up, we have Bobby Gaunt with the Coastal Alliance.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Bobby Gaunt. I live in Saugatuck, and I'm privileged to chair the board of the Saugatuck Dunes Coastal Alliance. Since 2007, the Alliance has focused on protecting and preserving the wild heart of Saugatuck, the Kalamazoo River mouth, and our dunes, wetlands, and natural areas that make our communities truly unique and inspiring for residents and visitors alike. Today, the Alliance is focused on stopping North Shore of Saugatuck's proposed sand dune mine excavation and removal of 250,000 tons of sand to create a private yacht marina. The proposed development would have a devastating and permanent impact on our local ecology and history. It poses a grave threat to the tourism that drives our local economy, and it is our position that it violates local, state, and federal regulations. I'm going to briefly comment on each of those areas, beginning with the destruction of our natural resources, history, and culture. As proposed, the North Shore Marina would erase 6.5 acres of rare critical dunes for commercial gain, drain the surrounding groundwater that feeds the globally imperiled interdunal wetlands on the Patty Burkholz natural area, damage the Potawatomi traditional cultural property by putting at risk Lake Sturgeon, burial sites, wild rice, and other cultural values, and destroy the archaeological and historic site of Singapore. The proposed marina also undermines the economic vision in our tri-community plan by forever changing the essential character of the wild heart of Saugatuck. The plan plainly states the perils of developments like this, and I quote the plan: a major attraction of both the Lake Michigan and Kalamazoo River waterfronts is their scenic natural shorelines composed of forested dunes and large wetland areas. Should these natural areas be greatly damaged or destroyed through inappropriate development, then the goose that laid the golden egg will be dead. I will highlight just 2 examples of the economic impact of the proposed development. Its adjacency to the Saugatuck Harbor natural area, Talmadge Woods, and the Patty Burkholz natural area diminishes and devalues the tri-community's $20+ million investment in those areas by introducing noise, vibrations and fumes, pollution, not to mention destroying the views. As well, it would set a dangerous precedent for the permitting of additional marina developments in our already congested river mouth, potentially including Pine Trail Camp and Oxbow. I'm going to wrap up with why the Coastal Alliance is here today. Last week, the Alliance held a town hall meeting at the SCA, and I want to thank the council members and others here today who attended. The goal of our meeting was to update everyone about our efforts to stop the proposed sand dune mine and marina, and to mobilize all to ask this city council, as well as elected officials in Douglas and the township, to initiate and pass a resolution stating that, and I quote, the proposed sand dune mine excavation and removal of 250,000 tons of sand within Michigan's critical dune boundary at the Kalamazoo River mouth is contrary to the public interest as detailed in the Tri-Community Master Plan. End quote. We are then asking the 3 municipalities to submit the approved resolution to the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, or as we lovingly refer to it, EAGLE, and to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for their permit reviews. In 2017, and again in 2018, EAGLE and the Army Corps of Engineers both directly asked this city to comment on the proposed excavation, and we remained silent. And remaining silent, we either unintentionally or intentionally sent a message that we really didn't care. But we do care. I know that we care. We have a voice and we have a lot at stake, not the least of which is this city's ownership and management of 16,000 frontage feet on the Kalamazoo River and Old Harbor, the continued strength of our local economy, and importantly, the unbreakable link between our natural resources and why we choose to live in Saugatuck. Time is of the essence. North Shore of Saugatuck state permit is about to expire, necessitating that they reapply to EAGLE. This will prompt a public hearing and comment period likely this fall. Having the voice of the city of Saugatuck opposing this development as contrary to the public interest, as detailed in our master plan, is a powerful message to send. Thank you to the council for your thoughtful and expeditious consideration of our request. As an active and longtime member of this community, and on behalf of the Alliance, I urge you to initiate and pass this resolution. And knowing how hard your job is, I thank you and we thank you for your service to our community. Thank you.
Bobby. Thanks, Bobby.
Well,
I know we're going to have, this is a major discussion item, so I know we'll have you here handy. And if you don't mind, I think that'll be the opportunity to really include you in some discussion. Chris Patterson's on the line, our attorney, and we'll kind of bring everybody up to speed on what happened since the town hall meeting Wednesday up until today. Is that fair? Okay, very good. All right. Good. With that, we'll go to public comment on agenda items only. I see we have some folks in the room. If you want to come up, please introduce yourself, your place of residence, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Sure.
Thank you.
My name is Philip Miller. I live with my wife Susie Richardson at 966 Holland Street, and we also own 898 Holland Street. We've been a resident here for 40 years. But I haven't been in front of the council for about 10 because most of my involvement had been in what was called a coordination with the city of Saugatuck, Save Our Shoreline. I was very personally involved in the negotiations and the raising of funds for what's called the Saugatuck Harbor Natural Area. This was a West Michigan involvement, and all the council members were involved. Tony Vittori, Mark, I worked with very closely, and the city manager there. I also worked on conservation easements, like the one in Talmadge Woods at the time with Tony and then Todd, who was head of that area. It is historically a precedent that this council has been involved deeply. They have got the attention of the West Michigan community. I went out there representing all the time this community, saying how important this was. So Save Our Shoreline hasn't stopped. Now this marina, you know, I'm very much for private property rights. They have a right to build homes, but they don't naturally have the right to build a marina. And that's pretty obvious to anybody that looks at it. If I wanted to do something with my property, I have 200 feet on the river, I'd have to go through a very extensive review process. I'm asking you to get involved like you have been in the past. I think that you have some obligations and responsibilities to a larger group who put money here because they thought this was so important. We tried to purchase the land that was on the north side of the pier, came very close to it. It didn't work out. Maybe someday in the future. I never lose my hope or my desire. But at this point, City of Saugatuck and this council can do something with the resolution. I'm respectfully asking you to do that on behalf of the city and West Michigan. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Phil.
Thank you. Come on up.
Madam Clerk, can we throw the shot clock on the public comment session if you're, thank you.
I'll be
Although-
fast.
No
My name,
offense.
my name is Holly Anderson and I live on Wyrick Drive in Saugatuck. First of all, I want to thank you for so quickly responding to requests from the Coastal Alliance to consider a resolution and have this meeting today. It really speaks volumes to your representation of all of us. And so thank you for that. I moved to Saugatuck because the land is sacred. It is the most beautiful place. I walk by the lake every day, walk around the river mouth area, and it is sacred ground. And I think we all need to do everything we can to protect it. Again, understand people have property rights, but we also have a lot of laws and regulations to prevent, especially the sand dune mining and the creation of that marina. So I strongly urge you to do everything within your power to use your voices along with the citizens to stop this project and protect our sacred land. Thank you.
Thanks, Holly.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Becky Bruns. I'm actually a resident of Lake Town, but I've been involved with the Coastal Alliance, and I thought I would just tell you a little story about yesterday. Although we have to go back a few years. When we were living in the Chicago area, my husband and I camped up in Manistee frequently. And one time on the way back, we needed lunch and we came to Saugatuck looking for a loaf of bread. Couldn't find a loaf of bread. It was like probably Labor Day weekend. We couldn't find parking. It was hot. It was awful. Never coming back to Saugatuck. Well, not 15 years after that, we're like, okay, we got to get out of Chicago. Where are we going to go? Not Wisconsin. Okay. And we ended up just north of here. And we love it. And we often think how funny that was. So my story about yesterday is I was hiking with my puppy up to Crow's Nest. And it's obviously gotten a lot of use over the last few years. And I saw more people on the hike yesterday than I'd seen many times. And as I got to the top, I looked to the north and I thought, thank goodness you can't see. From Crow's Nest, you can't see the houses, I'll just leave it there, that have been built at the river mouth. And you can't see where they would put the marina. And that was really sad because in the past, I wanted to be able to see north. And now I was just grateful that I couldn't see north. And I think about all the people who hike out to the channel on the beach and what they see and what they would see if we are unable to hold the line with this inappropriate and what we feel is illegal marina and sand dune mining. So thank you.
Thank you, Becky.
Anyone else? Anyone online, Madam Clerk?
No.
Okay, very good. Thank you, everyone. With that, we'll move on to discussion items. First up, the zoning and floodplain administrator appointment. Mr. Manager.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, this is going to be on your agenda for Monday.
Mhm,
As you know, I'm the interim,
yes.
but I think Ryan is the other Ryan, RC as we call him,
Mhm.
is ready to take on the role.
All right.
So this will be on your agenda for Monday.
All right, just need to make it official.
Correct.
Any questions from council? Pretty straightforward. Good. All right, with that, we'll move on to the second discussion item, Coastal Alliance. Mr. Manager.
Madam Mayor, happy to lead into this discussion if you'd like. We have the pleasure of having your attorney with us today. I will mention that Mr. Becken had requested the previous advice in regards to that he provided counsel with this project. So please do feel free to ask him any questions.
Mhm.
And you have a lot of correspondence
Mhm.
and Have at it.
All right, and before we turn it over to Christopher, I was at the town meeting the other evening, and it was wonderful to see so many people in attendance. And what really struck me was the timing of everything now, because we've had this discussion since what, January, probably, I think. And the timing really couldn't be better now. A number of things have happened. The Michigan Supreme Court ruled on whether or not the Coastal Alliance had standing. They have standing. And then the permit is also getting ready to expire on that project. And so therefore it's leaving a window open, so to speak. So I got home and sent our manager a note and said, we should discuss this right away. It's a good time to do it. So with that, then we were actually, our manager was able to get Christopher, myself, Bobby, and David Swan on the phone and have a really good conversation about a resolution versus maybe something more. So with that, I'll turn it over to the attorney. Hi, Christopher.
Good afternoon, everybody. Appreciate you accommodating me. Yeah, I just wanted to comment, as was mentioned, I did participate in a 30-minute meeting to get some background information from the Coastal Alliance. Certainly, I wasn't working with the city in 2017 or 2018, so I don't know the background with respect to those requests or sort of the institutional knowledge that would be there in deciding whether or not to move forward. But the current request that's before you is an indication to essentially participate, to sort of very simplify it, to participate in the public comment portion or provide input as a part of these open permits that are pending, especially before the Army Corps as they assess various factors. And I think during the presentation that the Coastal Alliance just gave you, they kind of used, they were terms of art that they referred to. Those are kind of specific portions of those factors that if you want to provide comment, you would specifically address. And ultimately, the request is to have council engage in providing some type of documentation supporting the general position that as the Army engineer or the Army Corps assesses this project, whether or not it's in the public interest. And so I think there's nothing that would prohibit the city council from engaging in memorializing some type of policy statement at the council level. Certainly, I think it was mentioned also in the introduction that there are individual elected members that may already be participating or at least are aware of what's going on at certain meetings happening in the area. You'd be permitted to do that as individual elected officials. You could do that in your personal capacity. And I think the request that's before you is, will city council speak on behalf of the city in general in reaching sort of a policy position that you would submit in those forums. If I understand from the introductory call that we had with the Coastal Alliance, there is a permit at Eagle that is basically going to be refiled or submitted, and there would be a process to be able to submit comment on that. There's also a different set of permits that are pending. That comment period essentially remains sort of open, and it's our understanding that the city could still submit comment or submit documents on that position. I think the request relates to kind of two items. One, does city council want to engage in having an approval to have a policy statement go to these agencies who are reviewing this request that would provide the position of the city? And then two, what form would you want that to go in? And I think the Coastal Alliance has done what I have sort of historically seen, which is they understand that you are very busy and it can often be difficult to draft in a group setting sort of what would be your findings or your position on it. So they have presented a document that you could use to approve, and then that document would be submitted to the applicable agencies. Or you can obviously draft your own. You could prepare another resolution that would go before council with whatever specific findings that you want to take on it. That could be approved and certainly go as part of the record. The other way that I've seen it done is that we have some general idea of what we want to speak to these specific factors, and then we could draft a letter. That letter could come from the manager on behalf of the council and be approved by city council before it's sent. But ultimately, you know, the main position is our office doesn't have an issue with council weighing in and providing input. This project is not sort of specifically the zoning authority. Those items are not specifically before you. They're in a different jurisdiction. And I do think that you have related interests that could be impacted by the project. So you're certainly free, if you want to, in those public processes to weigh in. It's not really largely different than we've also engaged, even with our time with the city, in Eagles processes related to certain public hearings that may happen for the placement of marinas or permits for dredging or permits related to docks. And so we do get those notices. And even in the last year, we have participated in one or two of those, at least even as part of the actual hearing to provide comments or to provide the city's position. It would be similar to that, although my recommendation would be that if you want to engage in that process from a city perspective, you'd want to memorialize it in some type of writing, either a resolution or giving direction to send a letter. And then, of course, that letter would be authorized by city council.
Okay. All right, so it sounds like we have two things that we would really need to discuss today. Number one, does council want to engage in this process? And then second, what form would we like that to take? That's what I'm gathering from what you've said. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so that's on the table for discussion. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think I'd like to kick it off, Mayor. Bobby and company, thank you for coming. I'm sure David would have liked to be here, but he's celebrating a 37th wedding anniversary, so that has precedence.
Yeah.
Um,
Indeed.
yeah,
Please.
he told me. I've talked to David about this project many times. As all of you, I think, know, I work for Eagle. When this came up before the township, both Russ and I did speak as private citizens on behalf of the public interest and asking that the township submitted a letter to the Army Corps of Engineers. I was only able to do that comfortably after consulting with Chris, our lawyer, to make sure that it didn't create a conflict for the city or my employer, the state. So I feel like I'm compelled to ask Chris again if I should be allowed to participate in these deliberations, because I really don't want to do anything that would jeopardize or create unintended consequences for the alliance, for the city, or indeed for the state of Michigan. So I would just like Chris's opinion on how I should approach deliberations on this matter. And if in fact I need to recuse myself from any vote down the road.
Yeah, I would say two things. One, certainly, as to the items that you do in your personal capacity, and this would be true of the other members of council, you can certainly go to a township meeting or to some other public meeting and indicate that you're doing so on behalf of your personal capacity, not on behalf of either the city or on behalf of Eagle. The question specifically related to Eagle and whether that presents an issue for your position there really goes to the extent to which, one, Eagle would have a policy, an employee policy related to what you're allowed to speak on or not speak on, and whether that would include contested case proceedings that are before Eagle. And then two, it's just with some background knowledge, it's not my understanding that your position at Eagle at all relates to the contested case process, nor do you work with the department that reviews the permit. So I've not reviewed any of Eagle's specific policies, but my assumption is that it does not restrict you just because you're an employee that's in a different department to otherwise engage in the process.
I think
Certainly,
if I may, the one issue I want to be mindful of is I'm in Eagle's executive division, so I do interface with department heads. I don't interface typically on a day-to-day basis with people that would look at a permit application, and indeed these people have the highest integrity and are very diligent in following statute. But nevertheless, I do cross paths with their management. So I just want to be really transparent about that and really clear, because I do not want to create unintended consequences for any of the stakeholders here.
sure, we can certainly assess that with respect to any sort of policies that Eagle may have. I don't have those in front of us, but generally speaking, if you're going to make comments about a project in general from the city council's perspective, it's probably not likely that you have a real conflict or a legal conflict as the law might present itself, but it may be the appearance of a conflict. And so for that reason, you could make the personal decision if you would want to abstain from any sort of vote on whether or not council proceeds. Our general recommendation is if any member does decide to abstain from the vote, they probably would want to also abstain from the deliberation related to that vote. So if there's going to be a vote taken today and you have concerns about that, we certainly would have a recommendation that you abstain, at least as your position of city council member for the moment, until you can sort out or otherwise allow us to review any documents Eagle may have. But other than that, as far as speaking speaking in your personal capacity and not on behalf of the agency or on behalf of city council, you're not making a decision, you're not really deliberating, you're otherwise just speaking about your personal opinion as it relates to those public interest factors that were addressed.
Thanks, Chris.
So yeah, today's a workshop, so this is more discussion than anything else. So he's free to discuss. It's then at a Monday, if we take it up on Monday, that you could then decide. what you
Okay,
wanna do.
yeah,
Does that sound
I may
right?
consult with Eagles council as well to see if they have a recommendation. So, thank you.
Okay, all right. Other council comments regarding whether or not we want to engage in this? That's our first item for discussion.
I would just like to say to the Coastal Alliance, what an excellent presentation you put on. It was really inspiring to see so many friends and neighbors. And I think that at this point, it's very important, I think, from the city's point of view. You know, we have obviously spent a lot of money to deal with big developers and the problems that they cause, and we want to be mindful, but this is, I would say, on brand or part of what we want to do as a city. So I would like to find a way to either have a resolution or utilize the letter provided.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good afternoon, everybody. Phil, good to see you. I'd forgotten about the Save Our Shore, the SOS. That was back in the early days of this process. And just a little bit of a history here. Mark will remember this. Broward Marine, which used to be located in this location. I used to work there when I was in college. And so I spent a lot of time in the dunes out there. And it was kind of funny, or not funny, but when we would be doing work, we'd occasionally run across saw blades or remnants of Singapore, and we would literally pull them out of the sand. And someone would just literally nail them up to the side of the building that used to be there. Probably most of you don't. Mark will remember the building that was out there. So the history is right there. And it was always kind of a mystery as to what actually remained. We could see like edges of buildings out there occasionally. So it was right there, it was right in front of us. We were there building boats, so that really wasn't our primary focus. But the importance of that area to the history of this area was clear to me as just a worker bee out there, and spent a lot of time hiking the dunes as a kid, and riding dune buggies and all that kind of stuff. And where we are today with the development, I was part of that process of discussing with the denizens about selling both parcels into the public trust. The south side through Mark Becken and Jane Vanderplan, or Jane, sorry, I can't remember Jane's name, but and then Barry Johnson really made a reality. And the North Shore itself, though I am not standing in the way of development, I think the city has an opportunity here to maintain some position on what, in my personal opinion, is a clear violation of the state law and the zoning in the township. And that's not a city position. That's my personal opinion. But from a preservation or and preservation is maybe not quite the right word, but maintaining this area as close as possible as to what people enjoy and not disturbing the groundwater and all the other things that the SDCA has made very clear to those who have attended the town halls. It's very clearly understood that this development as proposed would damage quite a bit of things that cannot be retrieved. So my position is that the resolution as presented in my mind, and apparently from Chris's position too, from a legal standpoint, does not put the city or its residents at legal jeopardy. And I think there's going to be more discussion about what the city can do to assist this process going forward. I have absolutely nothing that would stand in the way of my approving this resolution if presented. And I just want to acknowledge the letters. If you took a moment and read the comments, I mean, I had tears in my eyes because it really it brought me back to why I'm here. I mean, I didn't choose to live here. I was brought up here, but I know why people are here now. This is just a good reminder of why this is important to pay attention to this stuff and act.
Anyone else on council?
Yeah, well said, Russ, and I appreciate the presentation. I think, well, I was around back then when we first considered this, and I think we thought, correct me if I'm wrong, that whatever we would do would not make much of an impact or be relevant to the decision. Clearly now the timing is different and right, and would like to support that. I totally agree. Mark, would you comment on?
No problem. I concur with a lot of positions and a lot of feelings. However, it's our responsibility to sometimes take the emotion out of our decision-making process and look at it from a much broader perspective. Going back to, I think this is a third time we've been requested to participate or interject or, intervene in support of the Coastal Alliance, which has done a heck of a job. I mean, when they started this, it's like this thing is not going to go anywhere. They almost had like insurmountable odds at the start. And I think that maybe led to some of the city's reluctance to get involved back in 2017 and 2018. That being said, I'm glad Chris kind of is separating his last letter to the, maybe you can comment on it further, Chris. The last letter to the council, when this came up, was that January? Was it January that you approached us, Bobby? And there was a reluctance to interject ourselves into legal but existing lawsuits with our neighboring community. And I still am concerned about that. But you said that things have changed, which brings a different perspective and a different idea to the discussion and consideration. So that's the only hurdle I see in my own. Okay. Is I still don't want to put the city in a position of interjecting themselves into an existing legal lawsuit process that can maybe tip the scales of justice, so to speak, one way or the other, because I don't think that's our role.
Can we ask Chris, what do you, if he has a
Actually,
thought about
please
that?
do.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I think there's two things related to the prior comments. One is that so the timing of those was slightly different because the email request I think came in right around either December or the first of the year in 2022. We had a lawsuit that had been filed and was getting underway in October of 2021. There is, I suppose, a related Eagle permitting process that is intertwined in that litigation. And we also knew that there was certain pending litigation. And when we looked at the request at that time, because that sort of litigation that was filed against the city in October had not sort of taken much of its course at all. So exactly where those claims were going was not clear, exactly how we might get involved or what statements that we might make related to this public process and any sort of relationship it may have then was sort of the potential concerns earlier this year. I also think too, if I remember correctly, there were 2 attachments that were provided to us back in December or January. It was a little bit different than the documents that have been shared with us after the 30-minute phone call we had a week ago. There's quite a bit of information provided to us, including for instance, the township has, I think, taken at least 2 or 3 different letters that it has submitted and approved on behalf of the township board that its township manager has sent. And there's also sort of additional public input that's been requested. In addition to that, we've been shared the historical information from 2017 and 18 that indicates that, this isn't necessarily the city sort of going and voluntarily looking to intertwine itself. Those 2017 and those 2018 records that we've now reviewed in the last couple of days would show that the city was voluntarily asked to please submit any public comment that you have. And those agencies actually were requesting that. I wasn't here then, but it certainly at least paints the picture that it is maybe less of a concern or a risk. One, because we sort of know where this other ancillary litigation we think is heading. And 2, we think that's got less concern or any relatedness to commenting on this project, given the fact that the scope of the project includes a marina, which was somewhat under question in some related litigation.
Yeah, I think the original project was more involved around just residential development.
Right.
And though Well, that was pre-McClendon, I think, because there was plans about condos, high rises and stuff like that. I don't know the time frame of all that, but it was a different environment in 2017 and 2018 than it is today. Now, what about the interjection? And where's the lawsuit sit? I'm not even familiar with, up to date on that. Is that a fair question to ask? Anybody have
Chris?
information on that?
Chris, Scott.
Sure, I can share the information that is available in the public record if you'd like me to provide that information.
Yes, yes.
So currently, the litigation that you're referring to, of course, is the litigation that we sort of have termed as Dune Ridge. There's actually 3 plaintiffs because there's related entities on a piece of property on Park Street. And it has gone through some preliminary steps for some motions to dismiss.
Time out, Chris.
Wait,
Yeah.
yeah,
Time out.
no, the litigation as it applies to the North Shore development, not Dune Ridge. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, hold that one.
Okay. Well, I will say, just for clarification of the record, then, the litigation that I was referring to in January of 2022 was in part the Dune Ridge litigation and the potential relatedness of the dispute about a marina there and the involvement of a marina in this project. So just so you're clear that I was referencing that.
Oh, okay, got it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. And then related to the North Shore litigation, I don't know if you're referring to the Supreme Court's
Yeah.
decision
yes,
on standing.
Yes.
Um,
So there's,
Doesn't some of the litigation address the compliance of that with state, with zoning and state rules about adding to coastline?
okay, Bobby, you look like you have
Yeah.
an answer and.
I'll address and Chris, you can help me out because I think we've shared all of this with you. But in terms of the litigation on the part of the Coastal Alliance, as you all know, the Supreme Court ruled. And basically, based on that ruling, we were back in court a week ago, Monday. And the first issue to be addressed is to officially be given standing. So that is the issue in front of the court right now. And that just because of the legal process, that will probably take a couple months in order to be official standing to be declared. And then the litigation will begin and we'll argue the merits of the case as will North Shore. So that's where we're at.
Anything to add, Chris?
Anything to add, Chris?
No, I do not. I guess the only thing that is being reflected is that there has been an extensive amount of litigation to basically just prove whether or not Coastal Alliance can proceed in that.
Correct.
So they are at an early stage of the case, given that they're now being granted standing to actually litigate as an aggrieved party. The only other sort of items that were shared with us, so there's no confusion, because I suppose you could refer to it as litigation. There is also a contested case proceeding that I understand was occurring, and David did share an order. The Coastal Alliance in that proceeding had similar arguments and claims about standing and what it could actually contest in front of Eagle in an administrative proceeding. There was a ruling by the judge on that matter dismissing some of the Coastal Alliance's ability to have standing on some of the claims and granting them standing on some of the others. To date, my understanding from David is that the merits of that proceeding are sort of being short-circuited by them now filing a new amended application. So presumably there may be a new contested case hearing before Eagle that Coastal Alliance may now use the Michigan Supreme Court case on sort of defining aggrieved party status, although that was in a zoning context, but that contested case proceeding may be in the foreseeable future. But that application, as I understand it, has not yet been filed. And so there's not probably presently any contested case proceeding at Eagle.
The only thing we know for sure at this point is basically that we are back in front of Allegan County Circuit Court to be granted standing officially.
Got it.
We have not been yet officially granted standing. So that case, it will be heard over the next few months. And we think that I never want to say I'm confident, but we're encouraged that we will be granted standing, and then we will begin to argue the merits of the case in front of circuit court. As to Eagle, that is all, right now, all we do know for sure is that the permit for North Shore will expire on January the 23rd. And they have to reapply for a new permit. And depending on how that goes, anything can happen relative to standing and arguments. So
Okay, so does that answer, because you had still some concerns about, you did, yeah. Sorry, pointing at you.
Yeah.
Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, it addresses the urgency of a
Mhm.
Yes.
decision because the permit expires.
Right.
Okay. And I haven't really read through this several times, the proposed resolution. I'm not trying to get in the way with
No,
this.
no,
I
no,
just-
no, no.
But Mark, I want to say.
Well, hold on, no, no, no,
Yeah.
no, have a seat, have a seat. Yeah, I know, otherwise we'll get a free for all. Bobby's here representing, and so I just want to make sure, and we've got Christopher online. I know everybody wants to chime in, and I know everyone has a lot of passion around this, but to kind of keep this kind of organized, help me out. So, Mark.
So I guess that's,
Yeah.
well, if they have to go back and get standing, then the process, I assume, starts all over again on the permitting process from both Eagle and from the Army
yes,
Corps.
when two separate things,
Yeah.
there's one. When we're talking about the permitting process,
Mhm.
that's North Shore. Their permit expires on January the 23rd. So basically, in order to continue the project, they have to apply for a new permit from Eagle.
And that's for the marina.
That's for the marina.
Got it.
Just a question about that. As far as the public hearing in front of Eagle,
Right.
I was reading that it might take place this fall, or will it take place once it expires and then a public hearing is held after it expires?
It all depends on when North Shore submits their application for a new permit.
Okay.
So they have to submit it before January 23rd of 2023.
And once they do that,
Once
that's
they
when the
submit,
public
that's-
hearing will be held.
That starts everything.
And
yes.
is that where you want our resolution to be aimed towards, is towards the public hearing for Eagle and for the Army Corps of Engineers? I assume that
I want-
that's where you want our resolution to
We would
go
like,
in front of?
yes, we would like for the resolution for two reasons to be sent both places.
Yeah.
The Army Corps of Engineer, their review process remains underway. Typically, the Army Corps of Engineers issues permits within 3 to 6 months of being requested. We're now on our 6th year. And so it's still open for the city. They requested back in 2017, 2018 from all of the parties that the jurisdiction submit comments of public interest relative to the project. So that's still available for us to do. And that's one thing we're asking. So that can happen like now. And in terms of Eagle, that can happen once the permit is reapplied for and Eagle uses their process and announces the public hearing.
Thank you.
So our resolution or whatever action we take will have to be done twice. Now we're at the end of the first period of consideration, hearing or public comment period is still open,
Not at Eagle,
but at the US.
but at the Army Corps of Engineers, yes.
Yeah.
But you can submit, you can submit,
I was trying to get.
no, just in terms of timing. I'll confirm the timing, but for sure, Army Corps of Engineers can happen tomorrow. As long as the permit is, I'm sorry, is Chris?
He's moving, so I'm
Okay.
reading his
Chris,
body
are
language.
you-
through the
Well,
video.
I completely
misleading?
agree. I think just to clarify my understanding of the timing, and I'm going to sort of regurgitate what I heard from David. What my understanding is that the Eagle process probably doesn't need any submissions. There's no open public comment there. There's going to be a new application filed though, and comment can be submitted. And of
Correct.
course, as was reflected by one of the council members that I heard, that letter would then target the standard that Eagle would use to issue the marina permit. It's different than the factors that are being weighted by the Corps. That is for permit that has been filed since 17. It's my understanding that I think the initial notice even went out in August of 2017. And even in the notice, they set forth, they're looking at such issues as cultural resources, historical impacts, et cetera. They have several factors that they have to analyze when they are deciding if they would approve this. They do not necessarily, they basically do not disregard any comments that they receive while that permit remains open. So you would be permitted to submit comments up until the time when that permit is essentially denied or approved. So
Correct.
we don't know the necessary urgency in getting the comments in because nobody has indicated when that permit may be denied or issued. So I think, you're sort of erring on the side of caution as to how soon you put together those comments so that they can be assembled. And one other thing about the actual comments themselves, my understanding, and the Coastal Alliance can correct me if I'm wrong, but previously they had submitted they submitted a letter explaining specifically sort of their position and what they wanted the city to take on it. It included analyzing documents under those factors that the city has either adopted itself, such as the Tri-Community Master Plan, or that the city itself might have a real property interest in related to sort of the preservation of certain things adjacent to this project. In addition to that letter with that background, they also submitted, if I understand the documents correctly that were sent to us from David, a draft letter that's pretty extensive that could be used as a basis, certainly as it relates to the Army Corps. If I'm misunderstanding the documents we've been provided, certainly I think happy to be corrected, but there's quite a bit of work that's already been done for you.
Correct. You're not misunderstanding the documents, and I just want to be clear. Army Corps of Engineers, like now.
Yeah.
Eagle and reapplication then, whenever that happens. But Army Corps of Engineers now, because I just worry it's been almost 6 years. So let's get it done.
Okay. Very good.
And the final arbiter of the project as it relates, because this is pretty heavily worded towards the sand dune excavation. Is that an eagle or is that a core? It's an eagle, isn't it? No, the core is more river
How many
access
docks are compared
and docks and
all of that.
boat traffic,
Yeah.
impact on the waterway as opposed to,
Eagle excavation.
yeah,
Mhm.
development. And it's related as, because I don't think USAC has anything to do with, or the Army Corps has anything to do with critical sand dune enforcement. I think that's an eagle
It's an Eagle thing.
and they're dealing with.
Thank you.
So we may want to modify this.
Yeah, so, I'm still making sure where we are with
Fine, I'm
council
fine.
as far as where we're at with support for this. I've gotten everybody to chime in almost, so. Lauren.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we have a say in whether we want to support this resolution because we have property adjacent to where this will be, right? I mean, that's a big thing. Whether you agree with this development or not, we have property adjacent to it, and so we have a say. And I feel like that seals it for me. Obviously, there's, I want Eagle and the Army Corps of Engineers, to be weighing in on all of, how it will affect our area. Coastal Alliance has done an amazing job researching all of this, the effects it could have in our area. But I do feel that we should have a say in this, and by putting together a resolution, I support that.
No, I've said my piece. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Can I just
Yes, please.
interact with Lauren? So what you're feeling is that our letter, resolution of support, or whatever you want to put, should be geared more to the fact that we're an adjoining property owner. We have invested all this money, input, public goodwill, financial support into acquisition of the Old Harbor Natural Area. And structure that letter from that perspective.
Yeah, so that's a good segue. This is actually came up in the discussion on Friday. And Christopher was like, I'll see you and raise you one more. Basically, yes, wonderful resolution, but yet the Coastal Alliance has done so much work and put together such great documentation. So again, I'm going to turn it back over to Christopher, and you can explain about maybe going that step further now that this opportunity has presented itself.
Yeah, I think that with respect to city council comments, you certainly can decide the breadth of the topics that you want to discuss. There's a specific short document that has a request on it, and that's the one that's in your packet. And at the bottom of that request, it has sort of some proposed bold language that says, sort of move and resolve this position. And sort of in taking that position, you are getting to the heart of the standard. You're suggesting that when they look at this, it's not within the public interest to review this permit. But as I indicated after reviewing the documents, there is an extensive draft letter that can be used to add some additional detail and refinement to the position that council would take. And the only reason that I raised it is when you do have sort of stakeholders going around and getting the adjacent individuals to submit maybe sample letters. Sometimes if you get a whole flourish of sort of sample letters that it doesn't look like the individual municipality took the time to really develop their position, I think that it can carry less weight than if city council were to have maybe a more substantial resolution or a longer letter that addresses all of the city's concerns. So you may have a position on the historic preservation of the Singapore Dune settlement. You may also have a position as it relates to being a property owner. You may have a position as it relates to being a local municipality that's invested in improvements that offers those to the public. And then obviously some of the other factors related to ecology, and then also the tourism, the economic impact, all of those factors, which in large part they have been set forth in the draft letter that was provided. I think it's been previously maybe provided, but it's been re-provided to us within the last week, and it's a pretty extensive list of items. I think you probably could start there and decide of these draft items, what are all of the things that we sort of would agree with would go in that letter, and you could have a pretty extensive position taken that would be submitted as part of your public comment. I think you draft the core letter first or the resolution first. I think regardless of how you do it, you're either going to resolve it to support it or you're going to have it resolved in a resolution. Either one's going to indicate that it's supported by city council. The township's letters that had been previously submitted were essentially done by the board approving or ratifying the position that was in those letters, but the actual letter is sent from the manager on behalf of the board. And then you otherwise could basically take that same substantive content and put it in the form of a resolution and formally adopt it, and it sort of becomes your position and it gets forwarded. I don't want to get caught on the form over substance. Either way, the substance can be expanded upon and put in a document that you ratify that gets sent. I think you would start, if you want to take a position, you'd start with the core and you would put that together. Since we don't know what the application looks like for purposes of Eagle, we understand that it's going to be filed. When it is filed, you would take a look at it. You're going to get notice of a public hearing, and much like how the city's own process works, we could attend that public hearing. We probably could provide oral comment, or we could submit written comment as well as a part of that public hearing notice. But you're probably going to want to start first with the core, prepare the piece you want to submit, and then you're going to wait for the Eagle process to begin again and submit on that.
All right. So what I'm hearing you say is that we have the opportunity to go beyond the simple resolution, which would really kind of fall in with everything else and almost be ignored. We could go one further and have a pretty in-depth letter indicating our support for the Coastal Alliance. And using that as the letter that they have provided as a template. Is that right?
Yes, yeah, and I think that's most consistent with the comments I've heard as well, whereas, each individual council member has some interesting perspective on the reasons as to why you would take a position on it for the city. So you certainly would then be able to develop that.
Okay, all right.
My own comment, I'm always reluctant to just rubber stamp or adopt some type of a letter or resolution that is provided by another entity, and then we just, and I'd feel more comfortable if this was, between the two Ryans and Chris, they've got a good handle on what we're trying to accomplish and
Absolutely.
get us a resolution that,
Yeah.
I mean, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that be good? And then be able to have it by Monday? Is that too soon? Oh, that's too soon. Okay.
It's too soon.
Okay,
Yeah.
Monday too soon. All right. Okay.
Future meetings.
Soon. Okay.
Madam Mayor. Very
Soon.
soon.
Sooner rather than later. How's
I
that?
mean, Chris, can you back me up on that? That's
Yeah, I absolutely can. I think the documents that obviously you're impacting my personal schedule anyway, so of course I can support the city manager on that. But the documents that we have too, the draft is in a PDF form. It'd be helpful if we could get it coordinated to get a Word version. And then the draft version that we have along with supporting documents, there's probably at least maybe 12 to 14 source documents that are cited in the endnotes that need to be verified by staff to, as was mentioned by Councilmember Beck, and we'd want to verify that that's consistent with what the city is going to take as a position. And then in addition to that, the headings that are provided in sort of the draft letter, that total content is about 28 pages. So it's it is a very robust template that can be used. But I think that there are certain paragraphs and language that obviously needs to be reviewed and verified. There's historical information that dates back even to 1988 and 2003 and 2005. And so I think some of it is pretty obvious as far as pulling stuff from the Tri-City Master Plan and the maps related to the location, but some of the historical information and taking a position on quotes, especially for the economic contributions of tourism, as well as some of the information that's set forth on the historical aspects and the historical significance, it'd be, a pretty tall order to get that accomplished by Monday.
Oh, all right.
Thank you,
Okay,
Chris.
fine. Okay, fine. All right. Yes.
Madam Mayor, I just want to comment on that. I think it would be important for us to set a date to have this ready. Our next council meeting will be on Monday, the 24th. Would it be possible to have this ready for us on Wednesday, the 19th for our next workshop? I think in respect to the work that the Alliance has done, I think we should stay focused on this and make it a priority. Does that date work?
So we're,
That's a question for you, Madam Mayor. You're asking me now at this point. No, right. So Chris, can we get it done
The
by that,
workshop would be the
by that
19th.
time?
Yep.
Yeah, I think we can commit to that. I think the helpful part, I don't know exactly David's vacation schedule, but I'm assuming he'll be returning at some point before then. He can assist us in the documents he's already transmitted. We'll be able to work that into a draft and work with the Ryans on certainly getting something prepared by the 19th.
Great.
okay,
Madam
Thank
Mayor, I
you.
think we can do it.
We can do that. I
okay,
mean, we're happy to help.
okay. All right.
Thank
well,
you.
We'll use the 19th as our date.
Great.
How's that? Great. All right. Woo-hoo. All right. Good. It's always good to make people happy. All right. Anything else on the Coastal Alliance? No? All right. With that, we had some public comment that wanted to be made. Want to come on up again?
You do, Phil.
Okay.
Really, for Mark and I's discussion, I just wanted to say it's important that the city of Saugatuck and the council are participants and not spectators. And I think this is a much narrower issue and it has been passed. One reason I'm here. And this is how we attract outside money to new projects, which I'm always get phone calls about. And if I can show the city as a participant, thoughtful, it helps. So that was it.
Anyone else? Public comment? Come on up. You got to come up to the microphone so people hear your voice.
State your name again.
Yeah, please introduce yourself again.
Friends, Lake Township. I have three quick reactions. One, Lauren, you brought up something that, and put it in a way that I hadn't really thought about before. And I don't even know if our documents really stress the adjacency issue. So
Oh,
thank
it
you for
does.
that. Was this, someone else talked, Ross, you said something about not being able to ever undo the marina. And I've been saying that for years. You can't undig the marina. I mean, that is totally out. That's totally crazy. And the third thing is, we don't know when the Army Corps is going to finish their public interest factors review. We don't know. All we keep hearing is it's in process, it's in process, it's in process. It's been in process for 6 years. And I would just hate to have it happen, a week, 2 weeks before a really important measure of support came through. So,
Understand.
and what happens after Thanksgiving, between Thanksgiving and Christmas, the whole Army Corps could get. So, Let's get it in. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Miss.
Hold on, Rebecca.
Can you
Come on
spell
back.
this?
Bruns, Bruns. I know, Rebecca.
R-N-S.
Come back up.
Okay.
Go for it.
I just want to brag on the recent Michigan Supreme Court ruling by the Saugatuck Dunes Coastal Alliance. From what I understand, like Saugatuck always does, and you should take pride in this, it is actually the spearhead for every community involvement in the state of Michigan to have a voice and to have standing. If that's true, you have made history here. And I want you to know what this means to every small community against a very large, deep-pocketed developer. Not that all developments are bad, but it's not right for a community not to have a voice. And that's what they basically memorialize in the Supreme Court. So just take a lot of pride and thank you for doing it.
Very good. All right. Anyone online, Madam Clerk? All right, very good. Thank you all. All right, with that, we're to council comments. I'll just open up the floor and go around the horn. Any council comments?
I'll start.
Go for it.
I have a parent teacher conference that started at 5 o'clock.
Oh, go. Oh, you better go.
It's 5:05.
Oh, okay. Oops, there. Do you need to go? No. Anybody else? Yes, thanks everybody for the discussion. It was wonderful. I know there's been a lot of passion around this and I think all of us have probably been lobbied very hard to engage in this a lot sooner than now. But the timing was always such a thing. So I'm glad we have this opportunity. And I appreciate the very.
Well, thanks for indulging my.
Yeah.
We've indulged yours for years.
I know. They haven't been exposed to my side.
All right, very good.
I was gonna recite a number of ordinances that we should review,
Oh,
but given Scott's delay
Yeah.
here, I move we adjourn.
all right.
Second.
Motion second. All right, motion second. Voice vote. All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All right.